As far back as George Washington, the U.S. has always had a policy of neutrality when it came to European affairs. The U.S.'s policy of neutrality was ended in part with the sinking of the Lusitania, but after Woodrow Wilson could not tolerate the Germans' unrestricted submarine warfare. The Germans were like the problem children of the world, with the Allies being like its parents, who wanted to give little Kaiser Wilhelm every chance they could to correct and stop their own errors. However, one too many, and the parents decided to send their child to the Scared Straight program, complete with 10,000 soldiers assisting the Allies each day, and thousands of pounds of explosives that decimated Germany. However, the argument can be made that the U.S. was never really neutral because of their arms deals with the Allied nations of Britain, France, and Russia. The war continued to gain more momentum because of the imperialistic nature of the Allied powers and the quest for more land and raw materials that they needed. Initially, President Woodrow Wilson, we'll call him Big Daddy, resisted the war from the beginning because it did not receive a declaration, and he and the American citizens were content to let the immature children fight out their own differences while lending just a few $1 million worth of advice and arms to those petty kids. The sinking of the Lusitania was the major tipping point for many American citizens. However, Wilson kept his cool for about another 2 years.
It's not a tumor!
Obviously, the United States wanted the Allies to win the war because of their deep interest in their merchant routes to other parts of the world. And if the Allies didn't win the war, those merchant routes could potentially be cut off by the Central Powers. The president was a proud man and took the high road as often as he could. This meant not getting involved with the actions over in Europe, even though one of his own passenger liners was sunk by the enemy. This high road of neutrality consisted of giving the Allies a few more $1 million in arms. This way, Wilson didn't actually have to ask for a declaration of war and could keep his hands clean of the whole situation. After the Lusitania incident, many Americans wanted Wilson to go to war right away to retaliate against the Germans. The second push that propelled the United States towards war was the Zimmermann telegram, in which the Germans thought they had made a stroke of genius by enlisting the Mexicans to help in the event that the U.S. would come after the Germans. Wilson's political opponents started to see him as somebody who wouldn't pull the trigger if need be, and who would not be the right person to defend America because he wouldn't build up the army, and therefore America would be susceptible to an attack. Big Daddy Wilson had a plan up his sleeve and played his hand close to his vest and would not show his hand even after that Zimmermann telegram. However, Big Daddy Wilson had a plan up his sleeve and played his hand close to his vest and would not show his hand even after that Zimmermann telegram. However, the pesky children, who are the Triple Entente, would decide to try and sink every ship on the high seas. 5 American merchant ships went down, and now Wilson saw his opponent's hand, knew he had an ace up his sleeve in the support of the American people, who had been practically begging him to enter the war. As Mr. Tom Petty says, the waiting is the hardest part, but the American people finally got their wish. They were going to war. The Russians decided to have a revolution, which basically pulled them out of the war. The U.S. saw this as giving Germany the opportunity for a reprieve. They knew the Allies possibly couldn't defend themselves against the Germans and their allies, which necessitated the U.S. stepping in and taking Russia's place as a predominant superpower to aid the Allies' victory. This newfound aggressiveness was the result of America's new militaristic principles. There was much more to lose than just capitalism by not entering the war. Businesses, national pride, and financial institutions would all take a hit. And the last thing Wilson wanted to do was have a self-inflicted wound dash America's chance to change the tide on the world stage and take the spotlight as the premier financial and militaristic superpower of the world. Ultimately, saving democracy and capitalism and spreading them both was the main outcome and goal that the U.S. wanted to see. and could not afford to let dissolve by the hand of the Germans. After the war, Americans had a newfound nationalistic pride among them. As a militaristic and financial superpower, the likes of which they had never seen in their history. Capitalism had been saved.
Oh, groovy, smashing, yay capitalism!